So today I'm going to be talking a little bit about vaccines, and I want to be very clear to begin with that I very much don't want to try and change anyone's opinions or beliefs about this topic. I simply want to talk about how vaccines work. So, vaccines have a much older history than most people believe. The creation of vaccines is suitably associated with Edward Jenner around 1717, but he's mostly responsible for using cowpox as a safer way of preventing smallpox. The earliest actual occurrence of vaccination techniques is from India around 1000 AD, probably from techniques acquired from China and Africa. And this technique was called variolation. It basically involved exposing someone to a disease in order to prevent them from ever catching it again. So, vaccines are a pretty important topic to me because my grandfather caught polio during childhood, and he had difficulty walking for most of his life. Vaccines are very important for preventing these kinds of diseases in other people, and because of the misinformation that tends to circulate around the subject, I'm going to be discussing simply the types of vaccines, how they work, and what their outcome is. So, what kind of vaccines are there? There are currently 5 main types of vaccines that are recognized by the CDC. The first of these is called a live attenuated vaccine, and it basically fights viruses by using a weakened version of the disease to teach the immune system how to attack it. So one example of this would be the chickenpox vaccine, which is sometimes called the varicella vaccine. And the safety of these vaccines is heavily prioritized. It's only given to people with a strong enough immune system to handle it. So it would never be, for example, given to someone who is suffering from cancer and currently experiencing chemotherapy. So the next type of vaccine I'd like to discuss is called an inactivated vaccine. And these basically use a killed-off version of the virus in order to teach the immune system how to deal with it. These types of vaccines have a different type of reaction from live vaccines, so it's often necessary for people to get multiple doses of this vaccine, otherwise known as booster shots. So this type of vaccine would be something, for example, like measles. So toxoid vaccines are basically a type of vaccine that's used to prevent bacteria that can generate toxins from being able to be present in our immune system. So, an example of this would be, say, the tetanus shot. It's quite commonly known. So, a subunit vaccine is basically how a type of vaccine that fights off certain parts of the virus. So this can be effective at teaching how the immune system to attack a specific vital part of the virus in order to remove it. And one example of this would be the pertussis vaccine, which is also known as whooping cough. So the last type of vaccine I'd like to discuss is called a conjugate vaccine. And this basically protects against these interesting little viruses that are coated in what we call polysaccharide layer. And these are kind of neat because the vaccines associate the virus to these types of sugars. And so an example of this would be something called Haemophilus influenzae, and it's a common cause of pneumonia. So how do these vaccines actually work? The key idea of a vaccine is to develop immunity. This article I found called How Do Vaccines Work to Prevent People from Disease by Linda Nazarko discusses how vaccines simulate the conditions of disease without actually causing them. So basically a vaccine provides what we call disease antigens to the immune system. These antigens basically allow what we call a B lymphocyte, or a memory cell, to form, which makes the antibodies that actually fight the disease. But however, vaccines perform this process to create immunity, but they aren't a perfect system. The process can take a few weeks, and it is possible to get ill right before or right after vaccination. This is why a lot of people will mention, oh, hey, I think I got ill from getting a vaccine this one year. However, vaccines can't actually cause the disease it is for. So the outcome of vaccines is immunity. And immunity can be obtained in four different ways. The first of these that is called a natural active immunity. And this is your process of getting ill, fighting a disease, and then becoming immune to it. Natural passive immunity is not a type of immunity that occurs mostly in infants, exclusively in infants, sorry, where immunity is obtained from gaining antibodies from breast milk, essentially. The problem with this type of immunity, however, is that it's very temporary. It only lasts for a few weeks, And for that reason, it's very much advised by scientists to get your children immunized very early on, because they will be exposed. They're exposed to more pathogens than most people will be exposed to their entire lives. So the next disease is called artificial passive immunity, and this is a similar process to natural passive, except it's more of a way to cure someone who has a disease already. In this process, it's possible for someone who is immune to a certain disease, for example rabies, to have their antibodies injected into a person who's not immune to it and currently suffering from it. In this way, a disease can actually be fought off if someone were to acquire the disease of rabies. But again, the issue with this type of vaccine is that it only lasts a few weeks. So the last disease is what we call artificial active immunity. And this is basically the process of immunization, of vaccination, I'm sorry. Basically, the immune system is exposed to a disease without ever experiencing it. And the immunity for the certain disease that you're exposed to can be essentially permanent. So vaccine immunity, the permanence of vaccine immunity is the reason why scientists recommend vaccinating infants. And basically, yeah, they're exposed to more pathogens than they are in most of their lives. So in conclusion, vaccination has occurred for more than 1,000 years. The misunderstanding of it is an example of why I've explained what they are, how they work, and what they do. Extensive research has created multiple types of vaccines throughout the years. They work effectively at stopping the experience of disease, and they work to achieve immunity. I hope this speech gave a better understanding of how vaccinations work. Thanks for listening.